My book, The Crusader, Ronald Reagan, the Fall of Communism, which is what the film is based on, opens up with a chapter called Rock River Rescuer. And it's there that that's where I argue that it all began for Reagan. I mean, imagine this, Grace. The guy, he's a lifeguard for 7 years, 7 days a week, and he saved the lives of 77 people from drowning. Those lives that he saved at the Rock River instilled in Reagan this life-saving confidence that he could play the role of world saver, of lifesaver. And it's not a stretch to follow that current downstream, eventually to Reagan's believing, when no one else could, that he could save the world from the scourge of atheistic Soviet communism.
Hello and welcome to the Weekend Spectator. My name is Grace Reilly and I'm here with Paul Kengor, who is live from the Reagan Ranch Center. He was there for our last week's episode too, coming off of the Reagan premiere, and today we have a bit of a follow-up as the movie has just gone live, right? You can go see it right now. We're excited to talk to you more about that today and also dive deeper into Reagan, into conservatism and where it is today.
Yeah, welcome back. So I'm at the Reagan Ranch Center in Santa Barbara, and this is the actual place. I wish we could get a shot of the whole room, but we could probably get some pictures posted on the site. And right now, right above the camera that I'm talking to you guys through, is the Jeep that Ronald Reagan had, the Wrangler Jeep, Scrambler Jeep that he had at his Reagan Ranch. So the Reagan Ranch Center is on State Street in Santa Barbara. The actual Reagan Ranch itself is about a 40-minute drive up the Santa Ynez Mountains, about 45 minutes. And half of that, actually probably like 25 minutes of it, is just getting to the bottom of the canyon and then driving all the way up to get to his actual ranch. But what they have here in the middle of liberal Santa Barbara is really impressive. People, for people who come to California to see the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, which is worth the trip, just keep driving about another hour and come up to beautiful Santa Barbara. I mean, Santa Barbara is beautiful. The weather's amazing. It's perfect. Come here and see YAF's Reagan Ranch Center. It's a museum. They have their own museum here. It's great.
When I was there, so I was there for a weekend. It was very quick. It was for a YAF conference there at the Reagan Ranch Center. And we mentioned in the last episode, I was supposed to go to the actual Reagan Ranch, but the fires canceled that. Thank God the center or the ranch ended up being okay. But I was stunned by how beautiful California was, how perfect the weather was. It is true what they say. Even though it was California, and that was the first thing I thought when I got off the plane. Wow, look where I am.
You can see why everybody moves out here, right? Why
it's such a beautiful state.
And why liberals looking for, purpose and beauty and meaning and happiness in their lives they can come to this place of perfect weather, right? But the weather here is just magnificent. Every day, it's like low of like 75, high of like 81. Doesn't rain, breezy, no humidity at all, like no bugs. It's just the weather here is just close to perfect.
Yeah, it's really sad what Democrats have done to it. I mean, it is such a beautiful state, and
there's homeless people everywhere. I was really, really surprised by it. I mean, I've been here many times before, and the homeless people and also the pollution all around LA, not just smog and in the air, but litter everywhere. It's like, wow, liberals, you guys are doing a great job with the state of California. It's just really, really amazing what you're doing here.
Yeah, exactly. And Kamala Harris an old clip of her was unearthed recently of her saying, "So goes California, so goes the rest of our country." Well, don't California or America, please. Like, really. But anyway, back to Reagan. So last episode, it was super interesting to hear about your experience with Dennis Quaid and just your relationship with him, what it was like working with him, some of his feelings about the film, how it was his favorite that he'd ever made. And I think it would be really cool if we talk more about some of the other actors and actresses that were involved in the film, starting with Penelope Miller, who played Nancy Reagan. You were particularly impressed with her portrayal. Would love to hear more about that.
And she was fantastic. I mean, she was really good, Grace. I don't know. I'm a movie buff, like classical movie buffs, like movie buff, old movies, 40s,
I watch
50s.
the old movies. I have this is funny actually. I have a little basket. I made this at school for myself of old movie, just little cards so that I can go pick out of the hat basically some random old movie to watch if I'm
Yeah.
ever bored or want to watch an old movie. So I also like the old movies.
Yeah, and to be out at Grauman's Chinese Theater where the red carpet premiere was, and to see the hands, handprints and the cement and the stars on Hollywood Boulevard. And I remember saying to one of my kids, in fact, she said it. She said, "Wow, Dad, look, that's where we are, right?" And look, here's Bing Crosby. Here's look, Jimmy Durante over here, and then also you had almost right up there, John Travolta and Quentin Tarantino. So kind of the old and the new. But to be around that kind of history, Bob Hope, Cary Grant, it's really a neat thing. But yeah, Penelope Ann Miller. So I don't know modern movies as well, and so I don't really know of her work, what she's done before. I don't think I met her. It's possible maybe I met her when I was on the set for the filming in Guthrie, Oklahoma a few years ago. But she was just terrific as Nancy Reagan. Because this is a pro-Reagan film, it's not a partisan film at all. It certainly has a message that conservatives would like. I bet because of that, they're not going to be exactly handing out Oscar nominations for the cast. But if you're looking for a best supporting actress in a role, I don't know why this woman wouldn't get one. I mean, she was really good. She really had Nancy down and did a great job as Nancy.
That's great. And also David Henry, he was in the
Mm.
I told you I grew up watching him, so I thought it was really cool. And I also, so I'm impressed by Dennis Quaid and his talks of his faith and just how he's opened up recently about just the things that are important in his life. I've really enjoyed that. But David Henry too, he's a Catholic and he has a beautiful family. And
He does.
when I was growing up, he was on Disney Channel, so that's what I was watching. I saw him on that. But he's just been such an example, I think, of good Christian values. Some of the old Disney characters have gone completely crazy, as many of you know. And yeah, Disney's gone crazy itself in a lot of ways. But David Henry really just promotes family values, faith values. He's very open about his faith. He has, again, a beautiful family, a beautiful wife, and young kids. So he's another person who in Hollywood I just find to be so refreshing and inspiring that he holds those positions so true. And he played young Reagan in the film, and I've heard did an excellent job.
He was great. So there's a really good piece that was just done on him by National Catholic Register, which would be worth putting up on the screen and flagging. And he was, yeah, Wizards of Waverly Place, right? The Disney show maybe 10, 15 years ago. I know about it because my kids watched it. He was the older brother to the Selena Gomez character. And he's a very devout Catholic, very, very strong faith. And he's now making family-friendly films through his own production company. I'm trying to remember what the most recent one was, but we
Monster
watched it.
thing.
Yeah.
He just directed one. I just saw him post about it. I think it's called Monsters. I'm not sure.
Yes, I haven't seen that one. And there's one before that, but maybe came out a couple years ago now. And his brother also is in that film with him. And it's really great. He's really a solid young man. So he plays the young Reagan, and he's the Reagan at the Rock River. So my book, The Crusader, Ronald Reagan, the Fall of Communism, which is what the film is based on, opens up with a chapter called Rock River Rescuer. And it's there that that's where I argue that it all began for Reagan. I mean, imagine this, Grace. The guy, he's a lifeguard for 7 years, 7 days a week, and he saved the lives of 77 people from drowning. All right. And his son, Ron, and Ron's the one with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, who's a liberal and an atheist, but loves his dad, right? Mike Reagan, he's the conservative and the Christian. He's adopted. He's from the first marriage to Jane Wyman, loves his dad. He and others have said, you want to understand my dad? Go to the Rock River. That idea those lives that he saved at the Rock River instilled in Reagan this life-saving confidence that he could play the role of world saver, of lifesaver. And it's not a stretch to follow that current downstream, eventually to Reagan's believing, when no one else could, that he could save the world from the scourge of atheistic Soviet communism. That when he said, "We win, they lose," we could defeat the Soviet Union. That confidence begins by saving those lives in the Rock River. And that's David Henry. So when you see Reagan at the lifeguard stand in the movie, it's played by David Henry. There's a funny scene too, where a girl is pretending that she's drowning, and and then he comes and picks her up and carries her out, and she's got her arms around him. He's like, and I actually interviewed Olive and Seville. I remember their names, Olive and Sevilla Palmer, and Marion Emmert Foster. Is that it? Olive and Sevilla were two sisters in a nursing home in Dixon, Illinois, around the year 2001. And I was talking to them about Ronald Reagan at the Rock River. And it was Olive who said, I had a friend who damn near drowned trying to get him to save her. She's saying, Dutch, help me, right? And she almost ended up drowning. So he was this good-looking kid, and it's played so well by David Henry. People really enjoy those scenes in the movie.
Yeah, oh, that's so much fun. And I wonder too, so maybe other than "we win, they lose," or maybe that's it. Do you have a favorite Reagan quote, or just a few that you could
Yeah.
float out, your few favorite Reagan moments even?
Oh man, there's so many. I'll make it easier. They'll stick to some of the scenes in the movie. Ronald Reagan carrying his dad out of the snow. And I talked about that in God and Ronald Reagan, all my subsequent books on Reagan. But Reagan at that point was maybe 11, 12 years old. And he's coming home from the YMCA. It's like February 1922. His mom, Nell Reagan, who's the woman who plays Nell Reagan, does a beautiful job as well. Nell is such a great character in this film. But Nell is out on a sewing job, and Ronald Reagan comes home, and there's his father, Jack, drunk, with his arms spread out like this in the snow on the front porch. And as Reagan described it, his arms were outstretched, crucified, right? As if crucified. And the 11-year-old boy reaches down, and he could smell whiskey coming up from his dad's breath. And he grabs him and he drags him off the porch, and then inside, and then takes him up to bed. And that story, which I'm so glad it's reproduced in the movie, that has touched so many people over the years. I remember one time, Grace, I was watching the Republican National Convention, and Rand Paul was speaking. Rand Paul is going to be our gala speaker at the American Spectator this September. And I'm kind of paying attention off and on, doing some things. And then Rand Paul says, and as Paul Kengor says, I'm like, what? And he starts telling the story about Ronald Reagan pulling his dad out of the snow. I mean, it's such a human interest story that touched so many people in so many ways. So that's a great scene in the movie. And also, I'm so proud that we got this scene in there. And I really pressed Mark Joseph. I said, we need to include this because the liberals now are savaging Reagan on race. And my next big book is on Reagan and race. And we put the scene in where Reagan's two black friends on the football team at Eureka College, one of which, William Franklin Berge Burghardt, was Reagan's best friend. Reagan's best friend was a black kid. And in fact, they were best friends, closest friends, until Reagan, as president in 1981, called Berge before he went into surgery. And Berge died from that surgery. But they were denied a hotel room because of the color of their skin. And so Reagan tells Mac McKenzie, the coach, Max said, well, then we're not going to stay here then. We're not going to stay at this hotel if they're not going to let them in here. And Reagan said, Mac, we can't do that because it's freezing cold. This is October 1931, I think was the date of it. It was in October. He said, Mac, the guys will have a bad night's sleeping. We have a big game tomorrow. Who knows if we lose? Maybe some of the guys would get mad at Bergie and Jim Ratton, the other black kid in the team. I'll tell you what, let me bring him to my house. Give me cab fare, I'll bring him to my house, which is not that far away. And Mac was like, I don't know, you sure your parents would be like that? Reagan said, oh yeah, I know my parents, right? I mean, you talk about anti-racist, right? Ibram Kendi. Reagan and his parents were the original anti-racists. So they knock on the door. Nell and Jack, Reagan's parents, open the door. There's Dutch with these two black kids. And they say, come on in, boys. Come on in. And welcome him into the house. So I'm so glad that we got that scene in the movie. It's good for people to see that.
Yeah, that's really great. I wonder too. I know that the movie was great and you have nothing but good things to say about it. But I wonder, are there any scenes that you wish had made it in, or just anything from Reagan's life that you wish had made it in the movie but didn't, that you could, or any stories you could tell?
Yeah, boy, Mark Joseph, I don't know if you get angry at me for saying this, but we also had a scene where Jack Reagan, Reagan's dad, they're talking about the film Birth of a Nation, which was a Cecil B. DeMille film. And Jack pounds his fist on the table. We're not going to see that movie. That movie glorifies the Klan. Any movie that glorifies the Klan, this family's not going to see. And I talk about that throughout my Reagan and Race manuscript. Ronald Reagan never once in his entire life, Grace, went to see Birth of a Nation, which in many film schools is taught. For a while, I mean, it was considered like the epic, right? One of the greatest films of all time before Citizen Kane and Casablanca. Reagan, even when he was head of the Screen Actors Guild, you would expect, well, yeah, even if you hate the movie, you got to see it to know what's in it, right? But Reagan said, no, glorifies the KKK, man. I'm not going to go see it. And so that scene was in the film, and they took it out. But they had, at one point, the movie was about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I think they had to get it closer to 2. And so, some stuff ends up on the cutting room floor. I'm hoping that when the DVD comes out, it'll be an extended release that will have some of those added scenes. One other thing that I think people will be, and the American Spectator audience will appreciate this, they reproduced the shooting down by the Soviets of the Korean airliner Flight 007 on September 1st, 1983. And you see those Soviet fighter pilots shooting down that jet and blowing out of the sky. Man, that's chilling. It really is. I kind of wish that about 10 minutes of the film about Iran-Contra was not in there, but you have to include it because you got to include the peaks and the valleys, the good and the bad, dark night of the soul moments. And of course, the liberals will be foaming at the mouth and losing their minds. If Iran-Contra is not in there, it's an impeachable offense, right? But Iran-Contra is so difficult to explain to people. I mean, I've written articles on this, books on this. I have chapters in books on it. Read the book that Peter Schweizer and I did together called Assessing the Reagan Presidency. We have a chapter in there on Iran-Contra by Professor Ryan Barlow. People should read that. And also read Ed Meese's memoirs on Iran-Contra. It's a very complicated situation, which you have to be informed about to really understand it. And so to try to tell that in 10 minutes in a film, you just can't. But if you leave it out, they're going to savage you for leaving it out, right?
Yeah.
But the liberals, educate yourself about that one. Don't just be a bunch of blowhards, all right? Impeach Iran-Contra arms. Educate yourself for once, and don't just sit around and scream and act like an idiot.
Makes sense. And is there a launch date for your book, Reagan and Race, or a general idea of
No, we're trying to get it published now. We're looking for a publisher. And so hopefully, I think we're hopefully going to have a deal pretty soon.
well,
The difficulty is, this is a whole separate subject. We do a whole podcast on this. The publishing industry is just a complete mess right now. Regnery no longer exists. ISI Books, which has published 3 or 4 of my books, has been in a kind of a limbo. They published my book, A Pope and a President. The publishing industry is just a mess. But
Yeah.
this book needs published. And also one more thing, I have a long addendum at the end of the book on the Reagan comment to Nixon about monkeys. And that addendum will explain to people what Reagan was saying about that. It was not said in a racial way. All right. And if you're yelling at me right now, you wait and see, dude. All right. You read that chapter and you're gonna say, oh man, I screwed up. He didn't mean this in a racial way at all. Wow. And then you should go make penance and reparation for it after attacking. Mark Joseph told me that among the biggest threads of attack against them on Facebook for the Reagan movie is that comment to Nixon. And which is explainable because Reagan didn't mean it in a racial way. Anyway, that's in that book. One of the reasons I get that book published.
And we'll obviously talk a lot more about that, and everyone will be made aware when that's going to be coming out. But just quickly on conservatism too, and the state of it today, I would love to hear your thoughts. We talked about in a past episode how some people, David French, for example, think that it's in a really horrible place, and that
Well, he's going to save it by voting for Kamala Harris, David French is.
exactly, which even though he tried to explain it, I still haven't seen a good reason for how voting for Kamala Harris will save conservatism. But Reagan obviously has been such a substantial influence on conservatism. You've even written the tenets of Reagan conservatism. Maybe you could go into that a bit and just more generally conservatism, where it is today, what some of those tenets are, maybe some that we should focus on more that we've lost a little.
Yeah, in fact, our next print edition of the American Spectator is going to be on conservatism. And so people subscribe at the website, and one of the perks you get through the subscription is not only do you not get blocked by a paywall after a certain number of clicks, but you get our special print edition. And I have a piece called Reagan Conservatism is Alive and Well. What conservatism needs is not the right message. It already has the right message. It needs the right messenger and somebody who can explain it, articulate it, and yet that person is also likable. And that person was Ronald Reagan. Now, Barry Goldwater tried to do that in 1964, but they said Goldwater was conservatism with a frown. Reagan was conservatism with a smile. Goldwater lost the popular vote, what, 64 to 36% or something like that? Absolutely annihilated. And then Reagan in 1984 does a 20 years later, complete reversal, wins 49 out of 50 states. The Electoral College, 525 to 13. But in the Reagan movie, Grace, they put a big image up of the electoral map in 1984. And it's just all red with this little tiny blue dot. Tim Walls's Minnesota, right?
Yeah, of course.
At that time, it was Walter Mondale's Minnesota. But
And
that's what the right messenger will do with the right message. You need the right messenger.
yeah, and that not only showed us that it's possible for that to happen, right? Looking at that turnaround just 20 years later, and even just the fact that Reagan did that. I mean, that shows us that it is possible. And I think you would agree, and we kind of talked about this last time, that that could happen again. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But I'd like to add too, I think looking at the state of Gen Z and conservatism, there's definitely a lot more of an online conservative movement, Republican movement, which is in a lot of ways how I became involved in politics. But what I think is missing is that it's really easy, even this is more of a caution to young conservatives, but it's easy to get caught up in current events and politics. But if you don't do the back work of reading, understanding history, understanding what conservatism is at its root, where it came from, what the philosophy really is, then you're missing the whole point. And I think a lot of younger people are reading less and less. That's a problem that I see continuing unless young people are making sure that they're anchored in the foundations that they need to be when they're approaching issues like politics.
Yeah, they don't take the time to educate themselves about conservatism like they don't about Marxism, right? You and I have talked about that. And Russell Kirk, one of the preeminent philosophical spokesmen for conservatism, said conservatism is not an ideology, it's an attitude, right? It's a philosophy.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's about an enduring moral order. that's out there. And in the case of Reagan, in fact, I was rereading the start of my book, The Crusader, on the way out here in the airplane, just to kind of rebrief myself in case I got asked questions about it. And what jumped out at me was a quote in the beginning of the book that I'd forgotten about. It's from Walter Cronkite, who was just a terribly biased liberal CBS reporter. He's considered like the dean of journalists and everything, right? And he was from a better day where they did try to be more fair, but he was a partisan. But anyway, he has a quote there where he says something like, "I am just amazed by Reagan." They called it they called him the Teflon president because nothing unseemly stuck to him. He could shake anything off because he was so likable. And Cronkite said, "I'm just amazed by this Teflon presidency. Nothing sticks to Reagan. Everybody likes him. No one hates him. I've never met anyone like this. Right? Everyone loves the man." And that's what you need. You know, Donald Trump's biggest problem is that over 50% of the country not just dislike him, but hate his guts.
You know, I wonder too, just to jump in there quickly, and we've got to wrap up because we're running out of time, but I almost wonder, so I know, like you said before, that you can see this happening again, and I would agree that it is possible that something like this would happen again. My question would be that because of how further divided we've become, where we don't agree on, say, some of the things that we would have agreed on back in Reagan's day, so things like gender, right? I mean, that is a huge issue where you have a huge pocket of the radical left that is completely like almost one issue voting behind
Right.
things having to do with abortion or LGBTQ
Yeah.
issues, right? So when you have people that are that hyper focused on things like that, and then you have maybe more moderates and then obviously conservatives that hold fast to what conservatives do. I
Right.
wonder, is it even possible because of the ways that the ideologies have just grown apart to have that
Yeah.
happen?
No, it's a great point. I mean, somebody who's on fire for gay marriage, abortion, and transgenderism, how do you even reach that person, right? But of course, in Reagan's day, you had people who were on fire for Marxism, of all things. So
Yeah, Reagan definitely is the picture there of I think what we can strive to go back to, and especially up and you've been seeing the pictures on the screen throughout the episode. And
by the
feel
way, shout out to our good friends, me and you, Tom and Joan Strife. And
yes,
I know
absolutely.
that you are the Tom and Joan Strife video journalist of the American Spectator. And they're board members here at the Reagan Ranch Center. And they're very close to YAF. I've been out here with them before. And so wanted to make sure that I said hello to
Yeah,
them.
well, and I'm so grateful to them. They have done so much for me just in my walk in conservative politics, even just being able to do this show with you. I'm so grateful. I've communicated with them a bit just from afar through letters and whatnot, but I hope to meet them in person someday because really
Yeah.
they've had
They're
such a
great people, wonderful people.
everything that I've been able to do.
You got it. A good
Good. And
conversation.
yeah, everyone make sure that you go see the Reagan movie. We talked about this a bit last time and didn't get to it as much this time, but it's so important that we all go out and see the movie and support this project, especially as it's opening right now, opening
Yeah.
weekend. Because as we talked about, that's what determines how long this film will stay in the theaters, how if it's considered successful and whatnot.
Right.
So very
You want to
important.
make a movie a success, go out and see it. That's how you do it. And that's not just a thing like, go spend money and buy a ticket so you can, help me, or no, I mean you
It's
keep the
the
movie in the
values.
theaters by patroning the theater, that patronizing, going to the theater, right?
Yeah, and with this movie, as you said, it's not about you. It's not about really anything other than this is a movie that has such an important message, good values, good American values.
Yeah.
And so we should be supporting work like this in Hollywood so that we can
A
see more of it,
truly feel good movie for conservatives. You're gonna
which
see
will
this
be
and you'll say,
refreshing.
I haven't seen a movie like this since like, It's a Wonderful Life. Why don't they make movies like this anymore? Right.
Yeah, a perfect note to end on. Everyone will love this refreshing feel-good movie. I know it'll be refreshing for me because it is hard to find movies that we enjoy. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode of The Weekend Spectator. We will see you next week. Make sure to go to spectator.org for more and to like and subscribe to stay up to date with all of our latest videos, and make sure that you share with your friends.